Hi, my name is Jack Murray. I'm the CEO of Media HQ and your host for this episode of SaaStock's SaaS GTM Unlocked. We're going to talk today about the state of play in SaaS GTM, and I'm joined by Emma Stratton, founder and CEO of Punchy. Emma, how are you?
I'm really good, thank you.
So we're here today to talk about content and about messaging. Tell us a little bit about your current role and what the job entails.
Yeah, so I'm actually the founder of Punchy. So we're a messaging and positioning consultancy and training firm. So I develop company and product messaging for B2B tech companies, and I also train marketing teams at tech companies like Salesforce and Atlassian how to write better messaging.
Yeah, and like one of the big challenges with SaaS is that thing of positioning. Lots of people obsess about having a great idea, but if it's slightly off or if it doesn't fit exactly where it needs to go, it can cause huge problems.
Sure, yeah. Positioning is a really, really hard thing to do. Positioning a product correctly is the key to success. And then where messaging comes in, messaging is how you take that positioning, which is essentially a business strategy, an agreement among, hey, we're going to go after this audience, we're going to position ourselves as this type of solution. Messaging is how you actually start to bring your positioning to life. So you take that strategy and you bring it to life through key messages and words that hopefully will help that defined audience see your unique value.
And if somebody's starting something out and they've got a good idea, and everything starts with a germ of an idea on a piece of paper, if you misposition it or don't fully understand that, someone said bad positioning is like taking a train to the wrong destination.
Yeah.
Like, you could be 4 towns over, but you're going to have to come back.
That's right.
What's it like facing into that challenge when you're dealing with clients or with people that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, these days, I work with later stage companies where positioning changes are nuanced, right? Because they're pretty well established, and so there might be little moves to the left and the right based on kind of how they're evolving. But with an earlier stage startup, positioning is make or break. And I think early on, it's very obvious when your positioning or your messaging isn't landing. So the thing about messaging is sometimes the messaging doesn't land, and that could be because the messaging isn't quite right, or it could be that the positioning strategy behind the messaging is not right. So messaging is often where people see the problem.
Yeah.
Right, like it's not landing. We're putting out emails. No one's responding. I have these conversations, say these messages and talks with our prospects, and their eyes glaze over. So you can have problems with messaging because you're not talking about the right things, even though you have a great positioning, or you can have nice words, but the underlying positioning isn't correct, and it's still not going to land. So messaging is hard.
So, just by way of an example, we're having this conversation today. This is going to go out in the SaaStock channel. We know that we're talking to SaaS businesses who want to improve their positioning and messaging. Like, what tips would you give to people at the start where they're not sure about their positioning, so they want to get to proper messaging, but in the first instance, they're not really sure if they're in the right position to even write a message. What advice would you give to somebody like that?
Yeah, I would say kind of go with your gut. I think if you will have a sense if the positioning is not right, and that, if you've read April Dunford's books, right, she's got the signs of that. Sales conversations are not going well. People are not seeing the value in your product. They're going with competitors who aren't as good or do something totally different than what you're doing. So I found if the positioning's not working, things aren't going great. And so, if that is the issue, you need to kind of really think about, all right, who are we going after, right? So I have a very simple definition of positioning, which is really making a decision as to what is your product, who is it for, and what is the ultimate unique value that they can expect from you. So it's 3-part. And so maybe you have an audience problem. Maybe you've chosen a customer who they're not really interested in what you're selling, or that product, that problem that you solve isn't really that big of a problem. They're happy to kind of go along with it. That's usually where it starts. It's kind of not quite the right audience, or you don't quite understand what their motivations are, the problems they really care about. So really making sure, am I kind of talking to the right audience? Do they see the value in the problem that I'm solving? And are there enough of them for me to build a business?
And that's the crucial thing, that when you find the person, There should be an absolute boatload of them on LinkedIn,
exactly.
for example.
It's like, are they a one-off or are there a lot like them? And once you've found people,
can you go into Sales Navigator and find a bucket load of these people?
Exactly. That's exactly. Can you find other people like that? And then can you talk to some of them and have a real conversation and understand what are the challenges they're facing? How does it make them feel? Which ones, are the worst? And really get a sense of what motivates them. And then that's when you think, okay, how can my product come in and solve some of these in a unique way? How can I connect the dots from the pain that they feel and actually care about and want to solve and our product?
Yeah, and it's funny, like I have this term I refer to as the idiot's lesson. It's this thing where, it's something I like, if I get a good night's sleep, I feel better the next day. And like one of the things I'm always struck by in messaging is that like when I talk to somebody, they hear me. Yeah. So when I say, hey Emma, there's something I want to talk to you about, you can hear me because I use your name. So imagine someone has come to the challenge where they've got their positioning correct, they know who they're talking to. Talk to me about the messaging challenge then. You now know exactly, they're in your mind's eye, the people that you need to talk to. What's the messaging challenge then at that point?
So what I see happens a lot is companies have their positioning set, got the strategy, then it comes to messaging and they just start talking about themselves. They just start talking about the technology, they start talking about, what makes it so great under the hood, and they kind of forget that, hey, this is messaging for another person. This is meant to help another person see that you have a solution to their problems. But I think a lot of people get really kind of wrapped up in, well, how can we just explain what's in this platform? Or how can we explain that this is really different and really exciting? And I think that's where the emphasis goes. It's very inward facing. And that messaging just does not resonate with people.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
We had a workshop in my SaaS company last week where the question was really clear. What pain are we solving for the user? And one of the answers was describing all of the solutions. I said, no. The pain is the person going to the emergency room saying, I think I broke my leg, I can't bend my ankle, my foot is blue. I said, what you're describing is the pain meds, the plaster cast. I said, no, but what is the actual pain you're solving?
Right.
And is that the way to describe it in terms of the user? Like to actually forget all the bells and whistles and the solution, to be able to describe the pain clearly.
Exactly. That's really important. You should have that.
Yeah.
But I know there is a lot of technology that is created because it's a great tech and people think, oh, here's a buyer for this tech and they launch it and they don't know the buyer well or the industry. They just see a market opportunity and it's hard to resonate because maybe the founders haven't really experienced the pain that they're solving. I think the best startups are born out of the problem. They felt it. Maybe they experienced it themselves. They're going out to solve it, and then, hey, they can talk about it because they experienced it too. I think if you've truly experienced the pain, you understand it, and you can just talk really honestly about it, you're going to do pretty well in your messaging. Like you have a leg up. Whereas if you just had this great machine learning kind of thing going on and, an investor was like, oh, this would work really great in this market. And then you launch something. And then I think it could be really hard to find your footing and find trust with people and put out messaging that really resonates with the real problems that people are feeling.
So we've got positioning, then we've talked a little bit about messaging. Now I'm very lucky. I've been through this process and I have experienced the magic dust of people like you, and like I would consider myself a reasonably good writer, but when I'm involved in this process I just back away because there's this particular skill set to capture copy in a way that, like, they say you know it when you see it. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I've been through that process where I said, okay, no, I'm letting the professionals do it here.
Yeah.
And I've read the copy and went, oh, that's so good. That's exactly what we need.
Right. Well, for the last few years, I've really preached more about being clear, using casual conversational language, and using as few words as possible, but not forcing yourself to tiny word counts, but just try and be simple, human, and real.
Yeah.
That's what I coach, because I think actually this belief or feeling like everything you write must be like, jazz hands, right?
Yeah.
And Don
Draper. See through that, yeah.
And
Don Draper, yeah.
I think people don't really buy that marketing anymore, and I think regular people put that, when I say non-writers, put that pressure on themselves to write like a really clever headline, and then they end up writing something that sounds really cheesy and overdone. And so I'm like, don't worry about sounding cool or clever or exciting. focus on simplicity, clarity, and just saying it like a human. Right?
Saying it like the user would hear it to somebody else.
Exactly, say it like they would use it. And that's probably going to be really good. Some of the best headlines I've ever written for clients have really been pulled from customers and sort of saying it exactly like they say it. And it makes it really clear and easy to understand. A lot of those kind of jazz hands headlines don't mean anything. Or it's a play on words, but behind the play on words, it's not really saying a lot.
So here's another challenge then. You've got the positioning, you write great copy, you produce it, and then we come to the bit about being agile. And one of the problems sometimes with this is, it's like getting a daughter or a son married. Like, it's like a huge family wedding, and then you forget, well, times change, things shift, we add new features, we add new products, and it has to be an ongoing iterative process, not a big event, and people can really struggle with that.
Yeah, I mean, I always say at a minimum, you got to let messaging go for at least 6 months, all right? You have to to even give it a shot to know if it's working or not. Typically, I will tell earlier stage companies a year, maybe just check in. Is it still resonating? If nothing major has changed with the product and the positioning, is it still working? If not, great, keep going with it. But don't feel like you need to constantly fiddle just to feel like you have control over something, right? Don't fiddle. I mean, I worked with I guess they were Series B company and on messaging, and we really focused on being real and just echoing the voice of their customer. And they used their messaging for 2 years without changing it, which is like an eon in earlier stage years. So I think you have more longevity in messaging when you do take that approach of really focusing on the buyer, talking about what matters to them, and not kind of focusing on what you're selling today and how you like to talk about it.
And then the challenge of, you develop a really good message set, the challenge of extending that out, not just in the assets, but to the people as well, so that it's not on physical assets, but getting people to be able to write an SDR email in it, getting people to be able to give a webinar, but in your tone of voice and in the way that you talk.
Right, yeah. I mean, I guess, executing new messaging across the company can be hard depending on how big or small your company is. I work with later stage companies now, and I always recommend a cross-functional team goes through the messaging process, and then that kind of helps with, passing that message on to your teams and your departments. I also recommend kind of shorter messaging docs, so you can give one to everyone. They can read it really quickly and kind of get it, and then take it themselves and flex it and apply it however they want to. I think the danger of massive messaging documents, like a 27-page messaging doc, you give that to someone and they're like, well, there's a million things in here that I could talk about. What's most important?
So as we look to 2025, you can't swing a cat without hitting the word AI. Lots of people are generating messaging from ChatGPT or from other AI apps.
I know.
The humans, where do the skilled humans like you come in, and what does that look like for you for the next year?
Yeah, I mean, the AI is regurgitating all the bad messaging, and it's spitting out ineffective messaging because it's trained on a lot of ineffective messaging buzzwords, the leverage, the big words that end with shun. All of that kind of stuff that you see out there that I talk about is getting gifted right back to people. I run messaging training programs, and people try and cheat, and they'll be like, I put in ChatGPT, but it came up with all this jargon. I'm like, I know. So in order for that to change, everyone else has got to kind of have more simple human messaging. That's what I stand for, keeping it simple, human, and real. I'm sure the robots are coming for me. I don't know. They might get me one of these days.
They're coming for all of us.
They're coming for all of us, but until then, I'm still going to keep preaching that there is kind of a humanity to it that we need to put in the forefront. And
in the next couple of months, what particular projects are you working on that you'd like to highlight or people to tune into?
Well, I just launched a book.
Fantastic.
So I spent all
well
of
done.
last year.
I've written a book. I know how hard it is.
So I spent last year just writing a book. So it's really nice to be on the other end.
What's the book called?
It's called Make It Punchy.
Okay.
How to write simple tech messaging that wins hearts, minds, and markets. It's my whole process and how to write
Make It Punchy. And when is Make It Punchy out now? Or
it's been out for a month.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So it's only this thick. I always tell people it's only this thick. Imagine I wrote a book this big called Make It Punchy.
So you've been doing interviews and generating an awareness. And do you have training courses that you do regularly then based on the methodology? And
I do, yeah. I do one for individual marketers on Maven on their peer-to-peer workshop platform. And at Punchy, we train marketing teams. We've trained, 60, 70 companies now, over 1,000 marketers in how to do it. So if you want to actually work with me, that's how you can do it.
Emma, thank you for joining us today on SaaS GTM Unlocked. It's been really great. I'm passionate about messaging and storytelling, and it was really good to get under the hood. And if people are interested, you can get more on our social channels. Thank you for joining us today.